Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands and around the world on the iHeartRadio application. Download it today. It is free. And again, we appreciate you being a part of the program as we walk into league play this week for your Clemson Tigers. And not exactly the toughest slate of league games. We'll hear from Dabo Swanny coming up here on the program in just a little bit. And again, hour two, we'll peek over the fence into the backyard of the South Carolina Gamecocks as our buddy Mike Yuva joins the program from Watch Fox 57 in the Midlands. 803-450-0086. Look, we talked a little bit over the course of yesterday's program as we dove into the wild weekend that was in college football. The fact that, yes, there is always, I think, going to be criticism of scheduling in the Atlantic Coast Conference and maybe several other leagues. But look, when you look at what the ACC has done thus far, when it comes down to play against lower tier teams, not great in a lot of respects. When it comes to play against the SEC, hadn't been great. I mean, Pittsburgh this last weekend seems to be a decently bright spot, but maybe not a huge bright spot, knocking off Tennessee. Clemson losing to Georgia. Louisville losing to Ole Miss. I mean, Miami losing to Alabama, even though everybody kind of expected that one. Florida State losing to Jacksonville State. I mean, the league is taking a hit, right? But you can only play who's available. I mean, you can only play the teams on your schedule. And whatever deficiencies lie at a number of schools around the Atlantic Coast Conference, or any other conference for that matter, is not the fault of Clemson, not the fault of Alabama. So when we have schedules that yield a high number of conference games and a large percentage of your games being in conference, I've always made the argument about how difficult it truly is to evaluate in a lot of respects. But you got to take care of business outside of your league. You got to take care of business against lesser opponents. And the Atlantic Coast Conference has not done that. I mean, a prime example in just like if you're just one of these, man, the SEC guys, they just blow this thing up. Dude, Arkansas drilled Texas, the 15th ranked Longhorns. And Florida State got beat by Jacksonville State. Like, your teams in your league have to do work outside of conference. But again, it is not the measure of who you are. And that is an important component in all this that I think people sometimes want to slough off and forget. That what happens in Tallahassee, what happens in Winston-Salem, means squadoosh to how good Clemson is. It means nothing. It means nothing this Saturday when Clemson plays Georgia Tech. It means nothing in December if Clemson's in the ACC championship game. It really means nothing, however good your opponents are. Sure, is it nice to enter into postseason play or the college football playoff having gone through a rigorous schedule? Absolutely. You'd be battle-tested and all those things. But it doesn't change who your team is. It doesn't change the core elements of what you've got. And it's the reason that the great coaches in sports don't focus on the opponent. They focus on themselves. There's a reason that UCLA, under head coach John Wooden, was so incredibly successful. They weren't competing against every other program in the country. They were competing against UCLA every day, every possession, every shot. And so with that in mind, and league play looming for Clemson, And again, a league that is not greatly celebrated nationally by the virtues of what it has done on its own. Although I am occasionally astounded that I don't recall this being an issue for Florida State when they were so good. Nonetheless, I pose the question, is league play in this capacity a bad idea? And what I mean by that is if you are a Clemson of the world and you are in the Atlantic Division of the ACC, and there are multiple ranked teams in the Coastal Division, and you just happen to be in a year where you don't play any of those teams in the regular season, what more can you do? I don't know that you can do anything. You just have to play the games that are available. And that's the only thing that Clemson can really control. Now, over the long haul, and as we talk about college football playoff, as we talk about the expansion of the college football playoff, as we talk about the expansion of conferences, especially given the fact that the SEC is taking this thing up to 16 teams by adding Oklahoma and Texas at some point, is there a way in which we can either A, nullify these conversations about who you play, or B, find a better way to balance out the conferences from coast to coast? And again, there's still going to be some luck of the draw. And if you're a South Carolina Gamecock peeking over the fence, look, what's happened to you in the SEC is essentially not just the bad luck of the draw, but the bad luck of the draw plus timing. I mean, South Carolina was playing Arkansas as their cross-division opponent when Houston Nutt was there, and they had running backs galore, and they were a top 10 team, maybe even a top 5 team in some years. And that was South Carolina's West Division cross-conference opponent. And little did you know, Texas A&M comes into the league. You end up getting switched off to A&M, and then boom goes the dynamite. Texas A&M is now a top 5, top 10 team this year, last year, and maybe for the future. A lot of people buying into Jimbo Fisher there. Obviously, the folks in College Station they bumped his pay $1.5 million recently. And so I've just wondered for the longest time, how can we better evaluate these teams? And if we go to 16, I do believe one of the great benefits of this will be that I think we will finally have these leagues working together to create a more balanced schedule and a more balanced scheduling model. And I think it's going to be hard. But I think it can be done. Because right now for Clemson, your cross-conference rival, dude, is Georgia Tech. And they've been bad. And Clemson beating them 73-7 last season with the possibility of putting up a big number on Saturday, being nearly 30-point favorites. Like, I don't know the exact answer in this current model that we have, but you can make the argument that the cross-division rival is a terrible idea. That you'd be better off, instead of cross-division rivals, that you'd be better off perhaps pairing up some of the top teams cross-division every year. The perceived top teams. Who's going to be one of those teams that's going to be in the conversation of the college football playoff? Like Clemson could have used the opportunity to play a North Carolina or Miami this year. They could have taken advantage of that opportunity. But instead, it's just dumb luck who you end up with. Now, Schedules in college football are absurd. I mean, we know who Clemson's playing in 2035 in some respects. Almost every team in the country can go out 15 years and tell you, oh, man, yeah, can't wait. Dabo Swanny kind of joked the other day talking about Clemson in Georgia when he got that job in 2008 midseason that people are already talking about that Clemson-Georgia matchup in 2013. He said, 2013? I don't even know if I'm going to be here. But they were already fired up about it. So we've talked in the past here on the show that shakes the Southland about a commissioner of college football, and the advantages that would come along with that. And there are certainly some disadvantages. I'm sure you could come up with 100 of them. If you want to send me 100, if you want to send me 5, 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. But I do believe that what we will see, if we can get there, is the ability for college football to schedule better and more efficiently. Like, I don't think it's just dumb luck that Jacksonville and Houston were in the opener in the NFL, right? They wanted to put together a matchup between Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And if you bebop around the league in the NFL in week 1 specifically, what you find is a concerted effort to get some games out there that generate early season interest. It's just a byproduct of the marketing scheme that the NFL has perfectly capitalized on and created. And so with that thought process being out there, like, do you think Tom Brady and the Buccaneers just happen to be hooking up with the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, arguably the most fans of any team in the NFL, although they haven't had a boatload of success? Do you know the eyeballs on the previous Super Bowl champions or the reigning Super Bowl champions and the Cowboys? I mean, that it's little things like that a commissioner in a league can do and put together very quickly. And the problem is that the revenues at the college game is so much different than the revenues in the professional game. And you also don't have a system where the worst team gets the first pick. And so we have a system that perpetuates dominance. If you're Alabama, if you're Clemson, if you're Ohio State, but where I think a commissioner could come in and really help out with something like this is, one, creating a schedule model that would eliminate these automatic cross-divisional opponents. Now, I think you should have some autonomy on a couple of ball games. For example, Clemson and South Carolina should always play. Alabama and Auburn should always play. And if Alabama and Tennessee have to always play, then fine. A couple of games that you just lock in. We are always going to play this team. Or we always want to have a flex game available in addition to one of our locks. But then get a schedule model out where you play against the teams in your division. So if you have 8-team divisions, you play 7 division games, and we have a clear-cut division champ. This team won this division. Next, play a game against one of the teams from the other Power 5 leagues, meaning you have gone from 7 games to 8, 9, 10, 11 games. Then maybe that one that you're holding. Unless that one that you're holding falls into, in Clemson's case, South Carolina might be Clemson's SEC opponent in certain years where they would have been anyway, and then that would open up a spot for Clemson to schedule somebody else. But right now, to hold these schedules against Clemson, hold the schedules against even Ohio State. I mean, their schedules, they got about 4 or 5 weeks here that's not very good. Clemson, you hear about Phil Dracovic yesterday. I don't even know, did that come out during our show or after? Quarterback at Boston College, I think during our show. Out. Yeah, it came right after Qualk was on. Out. Clemson plays him in a couple of weeks. I mean, without Dracovic, look, I've said this before. I don't think Jeff Hafley's going to be there very long. I like what he's doing, but dude, they're not going to be. They probably weren't going to beat Clemson with him. They're certainly not going to beat him without him. I mean, unless the next guy that rolls in is Joe Montana Jr., Tom Brady the third. Like, unless that's the case. So schedules and the conversations that you're going to have or you're going to hear moving forward about Clemson, I mean, tune that out. There's nothing you can do. It's the way it's set up right now. I hope we have a better day where we don't have to hear those conversations and that maybe, they'll pair up some of the top flight teams in the country to give us results, even if it's a loss. And that's the other thing. Like, better to win than to lose in any capacity, it feels like. And incredibly, when you lose a game in the SEC for years, talk about, man, that was a quality loss. That's a quality loss. Well, then I'll snag that for a minute. Clemson has a quality loss on their schedule already. Because I think Georgia's going to continue to just run the table. And as long as that happens, the way Clemson lost, listen, it's better than, there is no reason at this point. You can't give me a single reason that if Clemson and Ohio State went out, that Ohio State would be ranked higher than Clemson at the end of the year. Not at this point. Not given the way their defenses played, not given the points they gave up, and the way Oregon won that game, and the way they were in trouble at times against Minnesota. Didn't play great against Minnesota. If Ohio State passes Clemson in the polls at any point this season, without the Tigers losing, you should be absolutely irate. Absolutely irate. They got beat by a worse team than Georgia. Now, if Georgia falls off and loses 3 or 4 games, and then Oregon keeps winning and Ohio State keeps winning, yeah. Talk to me then. But with the scenario that we are presented, all you can do is go out and play your games. If Clemson wins out and Georgia continues to win, then that's just the way it is. And some people won't like it. They'll say, man, well, Clemson doesn't play anybody. Dude, you can only play who you can play, and Clemson scheduled Georgia in the opener. One of the top, currently 2 teams in the country. I mean, you can only play who you can play. And Clemson should not be punished by their conference by any means. It's all about how you play. 803-450-0086. We hit a quick break. We'll bounce back with more of the show that shakes the Southland, a major coaching update coming out late yesterday. We'll dive into that a little bit here on the show that shakes the Southland. Stay with us.